My man,
Hey man, good to see you.
good to see you too. Uh, did you have any trouble with the link? No, nice. Cool. Aiden was having some trouble with it, so I just sent him a invite. So you back in town, back in New York?
I am back in New York. The bassist and I left.
Yeah,
Everyone's hanging on. Hope he gets a pay boost.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. Could have been a sitcom.
But I know I want to hear all about what, like, maybe on another. I know
You
you're
will.
busy.
You will.
Yeah.
It so much of it is actually like very relevant to being your word and
Mhm.
agreements and clear communication.
Yeah, no doubt.
And it's like, yeah, I can also see how if you're kind of like we are in a rare little bubble here that talks about integrity, being your word, clear communication, like all of these things. And I can see how if you're not up to speed on that, that could be very uncomfortable maybe to be kind of called on that.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. 100%.
So, anyways, good riddance, and very glad to be. It's just like it was solidification of everything that I stand for, of like artistic integrity, clear communication, authenticity.
Well, that's good. So it kind of like, that's great. So it galvanized all that stuff where you're like, ah, I see
Oh,
exactly what you don't
100%.
want.
Exactly. I'm just like, oh, right. You can buy followers, streams, publicity, and everything, but you can't buy artistry. You can't buy respect.
Mm, integrity, values, philosophy, vision.
You can buy rip-off songs and publicize them, but like you're not, that's not my kind of artistry. I'm not here for that.
Totally. And I don't think ultimately that that's sustainable or gratifying. Like you can tell yourself that, but you can only drag yourself through that for so long before you give up and say things like, "Oh, the music industry doesn't work," or all this kind of stuff. It's like, is that true, or is it your approach that's really the
Yeah, yeah.
it's not happening? So interestingly enough, I'm not sure where the usually we have some. I know Kate can't make it
They're
today.
the rest of the hummingbirds.
Yeah, I know Jane can't make it today. Uh, we might see Layla pop in here.
Bloop.
Um, So I don't know. I know that Aiden's probably going to show up here. So we'll kind of just see what happens. Maybe it'll be just you and I just going so deep on this
Let's
chat.
go. I'm here
Let's
for it.
go, baby.
Let's go. Whatever this session wants to be, I'm here for it.
Um, yeah, let me just pull this up. We can just maybe give it a couple more minutes.
The
Oh,
truth will set
nice.
you free.
Ellen's here. The truth will set you free. Exactly. I'm very stoked on this because of that. Um, Ellen, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Yeah,
Oh, hello, Ellen.
Hi, Devin.
nice to see you both. Some of the original, the OGs. You got the OGs in here right now.
Oh,
Um,
Ace, maybe?
OAs. What do you mean by OAs?
Oh, you haven't watched the series? Netflix series.
No,
OA.
no.
Oh, it's
Is
a mind-blowing thing. Yeah.
what's it about?
Oh, that would be total spoiler.
It's Ellen saying away. I think it's like original angels instead of original gangsters.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm into that. I'm into that. I'm into that for sure. 100%. Okay, well, I know Aiden's supposed to show up here. Um, I know I say this about every chapter, but I love what this chapter is about, especially
Excuse me, which chapter is it?
it is chapter 33. Truth is what clients value. Yeah, and I think better than is it, unless there's like before we jump right into it, is there anything that you guys I know that you guys weren't here for the last session, but I don't
I
know if
actually
you
streamed
watched
part of it
it.
on Facebook. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, is there anything that you want to weigh in on from that session? Anything that kind of worked its way into your week?
Yeah, it was the power of no's and the value of alignment. And it was so spot on with everything. Like that was the first day that I got back.
Mm.
And and yeah, like valuing my no and valuing other people's no's and just knowing that, yeah, maybe it takes 1,000 no's to get to the right thing that is in alignment, that is a true yes.
Mhm. Yes, dude. It's like I have to remember to do this. I'm gonna go back through that because of like whatever the 34 sessions that we've done, 33 sessions. That session was like just heavy hitter after heavy hitter, like everyone's different way of unpacking that chapter was mind blowing, and all the personal stories and insights and different angles on it was like it was a master class. It was ridiculous. I learned so much. Like I was astonished. I feel like I learned a lot from these sessions in general. And then even last night, like I had a session yesterday with Nick, and we got into the 80-20 rule. And like I've been into the 80-20 rule for a long time. So, a part of my brain wanted to shut down and be like, oh yeah, 80-20, yeah. But like luckily I held my mind open and really listened to what he had to say. And it really aligned with that no stuff. It's like if you say no to that 80% and you find that 20% and say yes to that, and then say no to the 80% in that and go right to the yes of the 20% of that, and just keep going down that like spiral rabbit hole, you can kind of very quickly 10x what you're doing almost without like effortlessly, without realizing that you're even doing that. And it kind of for me created this recognition of like how I think in generalities, in ways I didn't even realize I thought in generalities, and then how that like no could be so effective in finding my yes in just what I like in defining generalities into specifics that then help me unearth my personal voice. It's like if I say no to enough things, it brings into clarity what is a yes for me, which then brings into clarity what spirit or consciousness or whatever is speaking directly to me that I can then voice as my individuality. I'm like, holy fuck, this is crazy. Because we talked basically from a jazz perspective, and he was like, how do you know what lick to transcribe in a song? And I was like, well, he's like, out of a whole jazz solo, what lick, how do you know which lick you would pick? Like, well, it speaks to me. And he's like, yeah, exactly. And then you get enough of those licks together, the individual ones that spoke to you, and you mess with them, and out of that emerges your personal voice. He's like, now just apply that same idea to marketing or literally anything. Like, what is it that speaks to you? Like, if you go somewhere and buy cups for your house, which ones speak to you? You know what I mean? Like, this works on like multitude of levels to like define into your creative being or just your personal being. which helped me so much with defining my own business. I was like, oh my God, this is how to just take like the plethora of marketing books in the world, and instead of just following them verbatim or some philosophy verbatim or whatever, it's just say no to all the things that I'm like no, 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 no. But this, that's cool. I'll take that. And like read something else. No, 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 no. That doesn't speak to me. But this, that speaks to me, you know? And that being such a powerful way to market naturally, like actually find your authentic self out of these like millions of solos. Like if you looked at every book as a solo kind of thing. And it was interesting, this is a little bit of a rant, I guess, but hi Layla. Like in university, one of the things I get you to do is say learn a whole solo verbatim. And the reason why is you learn the whole solo so you can do a discourse on the solo and it kind of explain the mechanics of it, the harmony, all of the different scales, blah, blah, blah in it, right? And then you get graded on doing that solo. But that way of learning a solo never equates to being a good jazz musician. It's a very academic process, but it will never bring you to being a good jazz musician. It's like the same thing as if you read a marketing book from front to back and then tried to do it all verbatim. It doesn't apply to you personally. You have to like pick them all apart and find the pieces that work for you, just like a jazz solo or just like a set of repertoire. Like, oh, I'm gonna learn, like, you know, of all of Bach's material, if you just played all of Bach's material from the first song you played to the last song, that's not curating performance. You know, so it's very it's like no to 90% of Bach, but this tune, hell yeah. You know, no to 90% of Litz, but this tune, hell yeah, you know? So I thought that was like mind-blowing. So fucking useful. I'm trying to start sending it to as many people as we just did a sales kind of like course with Nick and gonna start using that no, like just sending it to people, basically being like, check this the fuck out. This is crazy. Look at all these people blowing up. But anyways, let's check out this. Have you met Aiden, Ellen?
Yes,
Nice.
yes, I remember him from last time. May I just quickly just say something? I did a free 5 days online course last week, which was mind-blowing. It was with Dominic Scafidi
Okay.
and Grace Kelly, and it was about creation and about finding your true desire and to really go with that. And yeah, everything that we know can come from that. It was super inspiring. And a lot of that implies also about saying no to be more in touch with where are my no's. Okay, it's here, but yeah. So to really feel the difference. So that's why I didn't join you last Wednesday.
Okay.
That was because I was choosing to sit in my sofa and crying my eyes out because I felt that that was what I needed to do then. Seeing so much new in myself, even though I had it on my calendar, I had it scheduled and everything. But no, I could just feel I need this time just to be me, to get some things processed. And the hard part about the no is when you really, really would like to say yes. You really would like to, but you just know that's not possible. And that's where I'm heading now. I can feel a difference because I allow so often my intellect to choose for me. What I would like, I use my intellect instead of my heart. And now it's become easier for me to sense the difference and to know, and then it's much easier when the head is getting clearer and I can hear my heart more.
I love that. I resonate with that so much, Ellen. So much. That has been like a big shedding for me, is that exact same thing. Like, and you're so right when it's almost like for me, it's almost like an abuse. It's like an abuse of my body and my feelings, like a denial. Like when I use my head and just deny my feelings and my body, my body's like, no, Neil, and my feelings are like, no, Neil, and my brain's like, yes, motherfucker. And it just drags the rest of me through it. But then I don't get the really powerful payoff that comes from listening to those bigger parts of myself that are my body and my feelings. It's so much bigger than my little brain and my little brain's like aspirations. It's crazy. So I love that, Ellen, and I also love that you took that time to do your own thing. I think that is to me, paradoxically, maybe that's the prosperous person formula. It's like sometimes the prosperous person formula is not going to the prosperous coach sessions, or like not, you know what I mean? It's like sometimes it's not taking in a bunch of information or having conversations or being committed and being on time and adhering to your schedule. It's like, no, actually, I set all that stuff up with my brain. And that's like only one of the people who's involved in this situation. So that's awesome. Power to you. I love that. Okay, let's dive into this, and I'm just gonna read it, and then we're gonna do what we do best. So this is by Steve Chandler. So truth is what clients value. By Steve. Let your prospects know what coaching with you would be like by having your intake conversations be long, extremely real, and truthful. You are selling coaching, so don't mince words or do the dance of money fear by flattering them, chatting them up, or acting in ways that disgust your own heart and soul. Instead, be willing to listen deeply and then be the first person in their lives to tell them the truth. Be real and tell the truth about how you really see their problems. Remember too, it's not just a numbers game. It's not just the luck of the draw. Talk to enough people and sooner or later one will cave in. It's not that. Just find one person and coach that person, then move on. That's really how coaching practices are built. Don't focus on massive numbers, because that takes your attention away from quality of listening, quality of conversation. It's all about the next person you talk to, not the number of people you talk to. Slow down and focus. Stay on the path. So, it's only that much, but I think one of the first things that I just want to talk about here, because I think it relates back to kind of something that Devin and I were saying before, or Devin was kind of talking about and clarifying before we got everyone else into the room, was that, believe it or not, being truthful and being in your integrity and seeking to have clarity in your thoughts and feelings is like rare. It's a rarity. Like that, And I think that that's what Chandler is trying to say in this in the beginning when he says, be the first person to talk to them about these kinds of things. I think for myself, at least, since I kind of live in this bubble, like Devin was also saying, of other people who are on a similar kind of plane of thinking, it's very easy to think that the way that you're thinking is obvious and natural and everywhere all the time. When in reality, and in the world at large, you really can be the first person to tell somebody the truth. And that sometimes it's one of those things of like overlooking the obvious. And I do that very easily. Just like the obvious truth is that most people don't don't have someone say to them, this is what I really hear in what you're saying. Or I am listening to your problem and I acknowledge that it exists. You know, these very, very direct, very, very simple things. And I think that that's kind of what Steve is talking about here. So we can move on from that, but I'd love to hear what other people think about that. Do you find yourself overstepping this very simple first kind of gate when speaking with people, or not trying to get a client, or like maybe noticing that someone could be a client? Does that fear come up? Oh, what I'm saying is not relevant, or what I'm saying is old news, or everybody knows these things, or isn't this is the obvious way to live your life? So I'm just wondering if those kinds of thoughts crop up ever. Another way to just put it is that I think it's the guy from Amazon. What's that guy, Steve? It's like all those famous guys are named Steve in the Gen X kind of world. But anyways, the guy who owned Amazon, I talk about this with Layla sometimes, is that he always talks about day one thinking. And he has this whole process where he says you always have to think day one with your company. Like as if today, every single day, it's the very first day of your company. Because as soon as you start to move away from that, you kind of the obvious becomes more and more blurred. And he says if you get to day three thinking, your company's already screwed. So in that kind of sense, the most obvious brass tacks things are always what you should be focusing on, as if every single day, what you think is now the obvious, that's when you start to get tripped up. Layla.
So more along the thinking of that first day element, not necessarily, for me personally, I don't necessarily find myself, what you were asking before, the fear that, what were you saying? The fear that someone might, anyways, it wasn't that. Whatever you said before, I don't feel bad.
Well, that's good.
Because, and the reason why is because a really wonderful mentor who taught me a lot of what I know about when I approach my birth clients, and which I've then applied through so many facets of my life and other business engagements. She used to say, every birth is your first birth. And if you take, which I often do, if you take the archetype of birth as an act of creation, which it very much is like the source of our own creation and existence, and you create life to be many acts of creations, whether or not it's like a song that you've written, or a new relationship that you're building, or what was somebody telling me the other day? She's starting a like a circle, a women's circle. Anything you're doing is always if you look at it always as the first birth or the first creation, then you are not attached to what it was before. And you're not attached to like what your experience was, or even more importantly, what the experience of the other person was. So the title of this chapter was value. What's it's
Truth is what clients value.
yeah, truth, right? Is what it says. Truth is what clients value. So it's not my truth. It's not my truth is not what I value, or what my previous experiences have, how they have shaped what I value. Truth is what a client values. So if you approach them with everything you've already done and everything you already know and everything you've already seen, you're kind of negating the client's own experience. You're limiting how many more experiences you might have. You're bonding yourself to a finite potential. You're creating impossibility. You're putting up walls that might not even exist, or that might be torn down right in that new experience. So that's how I've always, that's what I thought of when the last part of this chapter, where it starts to say, each client, like it's not about the number. It's not about the specific of what you see as like a symbol of your success. It's like staying present in each experience, and I think that applies for life in general. Like even with my kids, it's like one thing they launch at me one day, even if it sounds the same the next day, it's from like a totally different place. So if I approach them with like, oh, not this again, well, I'm actually just limiting so much of what could be created together. Devaluing their truth before I've even listened. Yeah.
I love that. The funny thing is I really connect that with like it was even like a little while ago, I was like, oh, I don't want to practice that scale. I practiced that scale so many times, like over these chords. And then I was like, oh. And then I practiced the scale and I was like, I don't know shit about this. There's so much more in here. There's so much more. Thank God I didn't listen to that little voice. It was like, you know this, you know about this. I like what you were saying there, Layla. I feel like it was like a deja vu. Like you can just clump things on, bringing your experience from. I really like what you're saying there. Bringing your experience from your past births. It reminds me of like, and I've seen this happen to a few different women actually, where their mothers. Like say they have their baby, they just have a baby, and their mom wants to like show them how to put the diaper on the baby, like the very first time they get to put it, and they're like their own mother like almost steals that experience from them by being like, oh, I know how to do this, let me show you, and the mother is just like, let me just like explore this very first moment here. Like, just give me a chance to, who cares if I do it wrong? Like, you know? So there's kind of like, it's crazy how our experience can then get in the way of letting the client or the person that we're with just have the experience and go through the process and we go from supporting to teaching, and then that can sometimes get right in the way of maybe this magical first time thing.
And that value, that title, I think that's really the crux of it. Because if you do what you say, where you're like, well, I know what's, like the mother who wants to change this, just like, I know what's true. I know what's true for you. That's like, who the heck ever wants something stuffed down their throat? No one, you know. Yeah.
Ellen.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of what you say, Leila. And what stood out for me was two words in particular. It was attachment. How attached are we, all of us, to our own experience? Because our own experience becomes our truth as we see it, but not everyone sees it like we do. So I see it as my job as a coach to sometimes tell the client the truth that I see that might not be their experience. I might see something beautiful in them that they don't see themselves. I can see possibilities that are open for them, but they don't see it themselves. And if that becomes their truth, that I'm hopeless, I'm not good at this, absolutely acknowledge that that's what they see. However, I think it's my job to question that as a truth. Because an experience becomes our truth for as long as we believe it to be. And that's why everything about the document and creating who you're being and all of that stuff is so powerful, I think. Because what we create becomes our truth. And one of the statements I've made for myself is, I can't remember it quite right now, but it has a lot of beautiful words of love and openness and things like that. And yesterday I realized, oh, I've forgotten that part of who I choose to be. So I looked up in my journal to find it. And then I would copy it for yesterday's page. And then I forgot one word. And that was the other word that stood out for me: curiosity. Because for as long as we think that we know, we are not being open. We are not curious about what else is there to see. Because what I see as my truth is just my experience of what truth is. And when I forget that, I forget to get curious. I forget to see it from a different perspective. And that's when I get attached to my own reality. Yeah, I'm not sure if that was quite to the chapter, but that's what came up for me.
And I very much hear that especially we had such a powerful conversation. I think it was like 2 sessions ago, or maybe 3 sessions now, about curiosity and the passion of curiosity. And it's such an amazing tool. It's like curiosity is like, for me, it's almost like a crowbar for my mind. It's like, like my mind wants to shut down and be like, no, I know about this, or no, I've already heard this, or my experience is this about that, or especially when it's like buzzwords or themes or things that people seem to be jumping on a bandwagon about, and my brain just starts clamping down and not, hyper filters come up. But sometimes, it's like I think we even talked about how curiosity is autonomy. Like when you are curious, you are autonomous. Like you're making the choice to discover things or search out things or look into them because you're making that choice, no matter what it is. And it's almost like fear is going to be the thing that says, oh, but if you look into this, then you're going to get wrapped up in it and you're going to believe it and it's going to become your truth, like you say, or whatever. But then if you just stay curious, you just keep being curious the whole time, never stop, then it doesn't get, you don't get stuck in like the knowing. And I'm sure we all know what it's like to get stuck in your knowing. Like, oh, I know this. But so I think I find that so true. And then what you're also saying about attachment, and Layla has been talking a lot about that lately, about non-attachment. We just had a conversation about it last night too. I was like in the sales call I was in, we talked about doing things without attachment. And it's kind of like, it's another one of those ways to kind of stay open to life. You just do it without thinking it's going to, that like you're not attached to the outcome. And I wonder in this moment, I really think about Devin was talking about kind of values and people who, in their integrity and all these things. And I wonder if being not like, I wonder if it's possible to practice non-attachment without a deep set of core values. It's almost like core values is really what sets you up to not be attached. Because you're not like, oh, I need the outcome. I need the outcome. You already have the outcome. You're like, no, these are my values. This is my philosophy. This is my vision. I'm putting it out into the world. I know it's good. So whatever comes back at me, when it comes back at me, it's going to be in alignment with that. But I don't need any particular feedback that I've already got. I just wonder if that's if there's some type of connection between those things.
But if truth is what you value, and I love Ellen said you could also be listening so deeply, you can hear someone's stuck truth. You're going to pause it to them. What is the value here? And can you place that value elsewhere? So I hear that. But then, Neil, if what you're saying is that to create a sense, it kind of all gets warbly, it's like, well, then to create a sense of detachment so that you can be open to, say, changing values, or that and then saying a core value infers an element of stuckedness, or core is like it's indicating like a central pillar. Well, central pillars hold up an entire building. So to place value on a central pillar of truth, like a core value would be a central pillar of truth. But what if that central pillar of truth has you attached? So is it really then being able to be in a state of detachment, and in this case, listening to someone, really, truly, deeply listening, because that's what this chapter, it's really just about, not just, it's about a very important thing, which is listening. And in that listening, we're not attached to our own senses of truth. And sometimes, I don't know about you all, but I've even had moments where in a conversation with someone, whether it's a client or whoever, one of my own values or truths, it starts shifting. I'm like, wow, there's actually no value in this here truth. I would like to make it be over here. So I wonder if that piece about detachment, I was just wondering, Neil, how you said, you sort of posited maybe you can't be in that state without these core values. You need to have a really strong sense of core values to be able to be detached, to be able to listen deeply, to be able, isn't that interesting though, how it almost like inverts itself, where it's like, but then we're sitting there, especially in a coaching conversation, are we not sometimes revealing the possibility of a different value in someone else's core value? So then is it?
No, continue. I'm liking this. I like how you're sorting this out.
Well, yeah, then I just wonder, is the ability to deeply listen, I almost think I guess I don't think that I don't think you have to have a strong sense of core values to I don't think that you need to I think that if you create your core values as stuck and fixed and therefore resulting in a sense of detachment and the ability to detach and deeply listen, that is fixating. That's fixing your core values as like, well, that's the reason why I can sit here and listen deeply. But isn't that just as much baloney as anybody else's core values? Like in the sense of like sometimes what Ellen was saying, where you could be listening and you're like, but I see a million, let's say if someone's core value is like, they somehow, people are against them. Everybody's against them. And that's like how they go about their life. Well, when you're hearing them and you're listening to them, are you only able to be detached in that moment because you don't think everybody's against people? So somehow your value stands like in direct opposition? Or could you be a person who thinks, yeah, everybody is against you? Would you be able to present possibility? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? This creates a little bit of a conundrum, I guess. I don't quite know what having a core value in this conversation. What is a core value if not something you have fixated as immovable, central, and thus causational to your very capacity, to your very ability to listen deeply and essentially be prosperous?
I love that. I really do love that. I love that. There's a couple things. The first thing that comes to mind is
Aiden.
what did you say? Wow, paradox. Yeah, totally. Well, it makes me think of uh just because you're not paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. You know, like it's like the idea that when you're, well, yeah, let's hear what Ellen had. If Ellen, I have things to say. I actually have a bunch of things I want to say to that, but I also want to hear what Ellen has to say. So let's see what happens here.
I have a lot to, haven't been here for a couple of weeks, so yeah, have a lot. Yes, I really resonates with the thing that we can get too attached to those values. And yeah, again, well, what is a value? It's not a thought. So that's how I see it right now. I'd be curious to see how other people will think of it. But to me, a value is it's a way of thinking about something. And my thinking, that will shift. So how my state of mind is in every moment, that will decide whether I come from love or fear. Either I'm curious or attached, open or I'm clinging. That's varying from every second. Because at any moment, a new thought can pop in and change everything around, for better and for worse. So when I'm feeling down, it's easier for me to look at my values and see, well, these are not so good. I will do this instead. I can be completely vulnerable for other people's way of thinking more when that's really not resonating with me. But if I'm coming from a place of fear, I might be insecure about my own values, and then I will stick to someone others instead, because what is really my value, mine alone, that I haven't just inherited or adopted from someone else. So, and that's why I have been, and I still have some hesitance about creating my document. Because that's something I see because you can, I think it has so much to do with where you're coming from when creating it, and to find those values. Because if you're coming from fear, then it will just be something that you cling to, something that you identify with from an unhealthy place. Then it becomes a doing. But if you can create a document or parts of it, I started to create part of something that could be a document. And that's coming from a place of stillness, wisdom, and love, and being. Rather than, oh, I have to have these values. I have to be, I have to create something. That's why I'm hesitant to create my document, because I don't want it to be a thing that I'm attached to. I don't want, but I can also, I change. I change every day. Some things remains, but a lot of me changes. I'm going through so much stuff now, hence the crying in the sofa last Wednesday, because things are shifting, and some things need to come out and are replaced with other stuff. And that curiosity again. You can't be attached and curious at the same time. So by being more focused on being curious, I think I'll be less attached. And that's some things I'm exploring nowadays that I find really interesting. Yeah. Again, I can't remember where I was going with this, but
No, I there's a bunch of things in there that are really good, I'll admit. I think you went in a great direction. I'm hesitant to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. In occult magic, the scariest part, yeah, I know, right? The scariest part is during an evocation in a ceremony. The thing that's scariest about doing it is that you don't know if you're evoking the demon or the demon's evoking you. And it's a tenuous connection because you're not sure if in some subtle way the demon has transmitted to you that it wants to manifest into the physical realm, or if it's truly your intention to unearth and evoke that being and then to learn from them. And the only way to deal with that is through the process of experiment and curiosity and being present the entire time. Because it's not about what they're doing or what you're doing, it's about the process of transmission, about this dance between you and that other being. Your intentions and their intentions, moment by moment by moment, and checking in continually throughout the process. Otherwise, one side will overtake the other side. Either you will overtake the demon or angel, or the angel will overtake you. So what you're saying is very interesting to me, because when we're talking about values, just like Layla had been saying, one of the things about occult magic is that inspecting your personal values is deeply difficult. And because of exactly what I'm saying is that when you know your value system, or when you think you know your value system, that's when the demon uses it against you to the best effect. Because you think you know what you're doing, and that's the worst place to be. You want to continually be asking yourself, is this my values? Is this my intention? Is this the process I'm trying to go through? Is this the information that I truly want? Is what they're telling me the truth? Is that like how does that work for them? How does that benefit them? How does it benefit me? And it's a constant transmission between you and whatever you're dealing with. An interesting thing about that is that there are quite a few therapists who liken, there are some occultists who are therapists, and they've written books about how a therapy session is exactly the same thing as a ceremonial magic session, because working with another human being is very much like working with a quote-unquote demon or angel, because they have their own intentions. And your value system, or what you think your value system is, communicating with their value system, or what they think is their value system. And it's this tenuous quantum experience, much like Layla is kind of saying. Yeah, and you could see, yeah, totally, that is true. Who wants to know, and what do you want to know? So I just found that to be very interesting, what you're saying, Ellen. The reason why I find it so interesting is because what made me attracted to the document, and I like that you brought the document up, is that when Nick spoke his document to me, I could see like this angelic form behind his document. I could see him in his pure metaphysical angelic form, like his most holy self. If it was like birthed out of the, the energy of life, like, and I was like, that's what the document is. I was like, that makes sense why you'd have a document, because it points at this thing more so than values or like a system of actions or even a way of being. It pointed at just his pure self. And I thought that that was such an interesting kind of way to circumvent what you're kind of saying, Ellen. And the document, Aiden, is something we should definitely get into. I'll send you a little video actually from my session with Nick talking about the document, because that's something that we could get into that would take like a while. But I guess maybe to sum it up, maybe you have your own document, right, Devin? Yeah, and Ellen does too. So you can tell me if this is or you're kind of building your document, Ellen. Yeah. And I think that Layla is unconsciously also in the process of building her document. But essentially what it is that everybody has for Aiden's kind of benefit, everyone has a document, which is essentially a set of declarations that you unconsciously believe about yourself. It could be something like I'm ugly, or like no one likes me, or you know what I mean? Or it could be, usually it's a mixture of both negative and positive statements, and they kind of nullify each other. So they end up not really pointing at anything specific. They don't really point at your highest self. They might point at your lower self. They might point all over the place, because they're like Ellen has said, there's things that you've inherited and things that you've kind of adopted. So the document is about kind of sorting out all that stuff that represents your current document, getting rid of the things you don't like, and then bringing in the things that really point at what I would call your highest self, or your angelic state, or your spirit body, or, you know what I mean, your Merkaba, if you want to get into like modern metaphysics or something. That kind of gel with you guys? Is that a good way of putting it? Yeah, totally, exactly. Like what's really true about you, and I'd say true beyond, even sometimes beyond language. Like the language points at something. The language isn't where the truth lies. The language is just words. Words with a certain energy in them. But I really like that, Ellen, and I really like what you're saying too, Layla. And one of the questions that a question that it brought up for me is kind of what you're saying, is that if you have core values are like pillars. So you're going to make a house on top of those pillars, or whatever it is that you're going to create. So then it makes me ask, how willing are you as a coach, or us as coaches, to knock down those pillars and set up a new house when it just makes sense? Like, how attached are you to your current pillars and your current house, like your current reality, you know? Are you brave enough to just dissolve them at any given moment and go back to day one, you know, back to square one? Does that kind of gels with what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I really want to hear what Aiden has to say too.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Yes. Hell yeah. Aiden, go for it.
Well, I was just finding what Layla was saying was like, it's a bit of a mind fuck to think like you have these core set of values, but that is inherently stuckness, and therefore like you can't be open to hearing the truth of, you know, a potential client or something. But like, I mean, what if those inherent values, those like core set of values, are like truth and compassion, like things that aid in your ability to interpret their truth, you know, to hear them. So like, because I think that in a coaching relationship, there's got to be like a sort of like, you have your own core set of values that kind of anchor you, so that when someone else is throwing all their stuff out there and you're trying to like hold space for them, that you're able to be like, okay, maybe separate yourself a little bit. You know, there is talking about that in people in the in the healing world, or nurses or whatnot, where like they do have to separate themselves a little bit. Like they need compassion inherently to be in that field of work, but like, if they see people's like bodies opened up and injured and such, and then they're just so what is it, permeable, that it could be too much to take on. And so I think the core set of values really comes into play there, where you're holding space for healing and helping and giving people guidance. You're not necessarily letting it be something you push on them or you proselytize, but like you are like staying grounded. And I would say that a core value of like truth and compassion is just incredibly essential. Like those are pillars of like being able to work with people, being able to hold space for other people. So yeah, I don't think, like, I think where the conversation started with like truth and core values are inherently like interconnected or whatever. I agree with that, and I wouldn't say that they are contradictory unless your core values are like, I'm the best coach in the world and like I know what's what, and as soon as we start talking I'm going to tell you what to do, like, okay, then maybe you need to reassess your core values. But like I think core values are, I mean, they are like essential structural elements for doing the work. At least that's my impression of what you mean by core values. So
Layla.
Yeah, totally. And then it makes me wonder, like, whether or not are we confusing core values, as in the pillars that hold up a house we've constructed, with like tools of a trade? Because if coaching is a trade, which it is, or it's a service, there are pillars to the service itself that make the service what it is. So if the house we're trying to give someone or invite someone into is the coaching house, there are a series of pillars that create that house. In the same breath, the core values that are mine, am I willing to deconstruct my home to rebuild a value if I were to find a new one? Yes, personally, yes. Would that deconstruction and reconstruction, is that really about the core values of coaching though? Is that really like, does my house building and destructing and rebuilding, that's over here, but when we come into the home of coaching, is it not that we're talking about almost like the tools of coaching, or say the core values that are about like this in this chapter? And maybe that's where I was kind of getting a little mind boggled, or sort of sort of mixed up a bit. And maybe that's where the mix up is. It's like, if we're talking about coaching someone, or we're talking about, creating space for someone, we're doing it within a home that we've all been learning how it's built. It's a very specific, like, people were using tools. You could, it's like a carpenter can't just, well, I guess she could go out into the world and just build a new home using none of the pillars of like carpentry, and the house might fall down or you might be totally innovative and create some totally new other form of a home. So there's that. So there's like, as we step into a coaching relationship, there's pillars in coaching relationship. If we're stepping into one, how you say, this prosperous person, well, there's obviously like core, like you're saying, Aiden, compassion, and like there's obviously going to be, there are core values to a lifestyle, you could say, or a way of being. And that's where we're able to sit and listen to someone. And what we're listening for, I think, essentially, is, are this person's core values, are they aligned with the core value that we believe, that we value, as something that offers a person an innate sense of success and prosperity?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, where still lies my own inner actual, like what Ellen was saying, like the truth, or the bits that like I'm creating for me, you know, in that space, I definitely have pillars. Has Neil categorically deconstructed like 6 to 10 of them in the past 5 years? And I've had to open, oh yeah, by categorically, I mean demolished. And I've had to like choose whether I wanted to rebuild that value to create a new home. I think maybe there's something in that. It's like, because Ellen, I think you're bang on about like this flexibility or this like non-attachment, this curiosity. I think if we're sitting in a state of true deep listening, we are intrinsically curious. Is curiosity of value or is it a tool? Are those different?
That's really interesting. I really like that because that's like, obviously you can get really deconstructionist and be like, what are the true definitions of all these words? Ooh, Devin.
Very interesting conversation, guys. Thank you for everyone bringing bringing your insights and wisdom to the table. I kind of wanted to zoom out for a moment, and this is maybe a little meta, but I realized like what is happening right here in this conversation where we're talking about inspecting values and deeper reflection of like what is a value? What do I hold as values? How do my values interact with a session? That seems to be exactly what this chapter specifically is pointing at as a practice of creating enough space to slow down and to get to these things that would never usually happen in a conversation out in the wild. So just like what's happening here feels like an example of slowing down and getting to inspect deeper levels of ourself. And I think it's really cool. Yeah, you guys have brought up such interesting points about what values are needed for maybe the craft or the practice or like a tool, and what we hold deeply. And is it like fixed or is it being grounded? Is it like a filter that we see the world through and we can be curious when that other person's world doesn't align with ours and we can kind of get curious about that? I don't have like a strong point other than it feels like what we're doing in this is exactly the space that Steve is encouraging us to create in these sessions. And there are like 2 quotes that I wanted to share that keep coming up. One is, it's like strong opinions loosely held. So I can come in believing what I believe to be my core values are, and still with an openness to go, hey, if that's not right, I'm ready to drop that. If that's not useful, let's drop it. And there was this other quote about intelligence being the ability to hold seemingly divergent ideas or stances at the same time while still being able to function and create this space of openness and curiosity. So what an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I like what Devin, what I really like about what you're saying there is kind of like, which is another meta level of coaching, is how you just acknowledged all of these different things at the same time. So you kind of brought this kind of soothing energy to what's in a way a little bit of a mental grind, Not that anyone's grinding against anyone, but just though that's some difficult granular level stuff to be working through. Is it a tool? Is it a value? Like, is it tenuous? Is it fixed? Like, what are these? Can they be both? Can they be all these things at the same time? Like, is it possible for us to be able to take this entire conversation and put it over there and still be like comfortable with who we are without knowing? Like all of those elements are useful tools in coaching, useful ways of being, useful values, you know, while all at the same time being able to dissolve them is, like you're saying, a very high level of intelligence. So we're having a very shared level of intelligence here in the conversation by kind of peacefully grinding things down to a granular level, which is very cool, and like you said, very rare. And it is a kind of an expose of what a good coaching conversation can be by postulating these things that might be inspiring. Yeah.
One more quick thing. Yeah, I've said this before on calls, but you are really good at looking underneath the surface level. And I know one time there was like a painting of an ocean, and I was like, you can respond at the level of behavior, but we can also sink down and point to deeper truths. And I was actually sharing this last night with someone about my dog. And I was like, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned with her is that I can really not love the behavior, but I can love her. And so I can kind of see underneath. And I think in powerful coaching conversations, we can kind of like, you can hear all that stuff and kind of get curious about, like, what I'm hearing is that truth and integrity is really important for you. Is that one of your core values? And it might not be one of mine, but you can kind of reflect back, and it feels like the work, the kind of self-inquiry is really valuable, practical, and useful, and like something that we should all kind of be up to speed on and bringing into these conversations. I'm totally blanking on the Byron Katie.
Byron Katie. I need to check out Byron Katie's. So
Yeah,
prolific.
more questions for the work, like that process, are just so illuminating, and I think it can help us see like what we value, and then it can also help reflect back what other people value and stand for.
And I think that I really want to touch on in what you're saying, which I think is so holistic, is being able to love people regardless of their behavior. Like, obviously there's limits to that, like it lives in the limit to a degree, but for the most part, most human beings' behaviors are, you know, we might have an opinion about the behaviors, but ultimately everyone is a lovable person. And I think that that is such an important thing to witness, maybe without putting anything on it, is like, regardless of what your behaviors are, those can be trained or changed or whatever, but you're lovable. And I love you, you know, like that's like where the real transformation seems to occur, is in that, you know, like when I watch some of Steve Hardison's videos, it's crazy how intense he can be, like savage almost, but you just get this feeling of intense love from him. Like he's loving you, even though he might be like berating you for being a piece of shit or something like that. You still get this feeling that he still loves you underneath all of that, like deeply loves you. So I think that's really that's amazing. And okay, so I want to just shift gears here a little bit, because I think that we're getting into a really good part of this chapter, but I also, if we were going to grind down anything else in this chapter, and I think it connects to the prosperous person formula, I'm just going to share this again to kind of reset. So we really dove into the listening part, and I think that that's really good. And then the rest of the chapter really is like, remember too, it's not just a numbers game. It's not just the luck of the draw. Talk to enough people and sooner or later one will cave in. It's not that. Just find one person and coach that person and then move on. That's really how coaching practices are built. So, and it goes on, don't focus on massive numbers, because that takes your attention away from quality listening, quality of conversation. It's all about the next person you talk to, not the number of people you talk to. So, like, I don't have a huge prompt for that, but I just think that that goes really deep. Like I just as an example, I was at the gym the other day and this guy just started talking to this guy at the gym. And he was like, I see you here all the time at 1 in the afternoon. Like you must have a really flexible job. What do you do? And I was like, I'm a transformational coach. And he was like, oh, what does that mean? And I basically said to him, well, there's a lot of information in the world and there's not a lot of transformation. And I was like in the middle of doing my workout. So I just went back to doing my workout. And then I was like, and he just like looked at me and I could see that like that spark of curiosity, like he wanted to know more, but I was, too focused on what I was doing. And I didn't get in there with him. I didn't think about kind of opening that up and getting curious about his curiosity. So I missed a chance to be with someone. And it's funny because there's been this kind of like I've been talking to Nick and doing sales calls and all this stuff, and it was like I need to fill like 1 or 2 more slots on my calendar. So I'm like, then that could have been a chance to fill the slot, but I didn't do it because I just wasn't with that person. So my question is 2 parts. When you've had a conversation with someone and you've talked about transformational coaching, have you seen that spark of curiosity? Like, can you see it? And have you tried to do anything about it? So that's my first question. Have you tried to be with that person and get curious about it? And if not, why? What happened? Like, were you? Devin.
The big thing that's coming up for me is that you can say that. You can say you're a transformational coach and that like great little one-liner, and you recognize that there's curiosity. And also the opportunity is not lost. It sounds like you guys see each other at the gym all the time.
True.
I think the big thing is like you can say that and there can be no curiosity. And it's like, no, that doesn't resonate. Cool. I'm not going to force that. I'm not going to push that. Like if it doesn't spark something in them and they don't lean in, it feels, at least for me, like, great. We're done. We're done with that. I'm going to go back to my sets.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So what though if it does spark the curiosity? That's like, what if you do see that little glimmer?
I just get curious. I love what you said. You get curious about the curiosity. Like, and it could be something as simple as like, have you ever worked with a coach before?
I love that.
You know anyone who's worked with a coach before?
I love that. See, I say that not only for myself, I say that for anybody listening to anybody in the call. And also because that I just wanted to kind of to put a box around that fact that we can see a curiosity in someone else. Like somehow there's a tangible quality there. So if we're like, so what is that little thing? How does that I'm just kind of wanting to put a box around that. Layla.
I think you can also not see a curiosity at first. And I don't necessarily think, for me at least, it's not an immediate, say, return to the sets. Sometimes it's that as I show curiosity, like as I am the curious leader, it will grow a sense of curiosity in someone. So I don't necessarily immediately turn myself off from the possibilities when that first spark doesn't immediately reveal someone that energy of like, huh? What is that? Sometimes I think it's can be a lot more gentle and a lot slower than we anticipate. And it's me, the curious leader, that creates space for someone to feel safe in curiosity, because like we're saying, if a lot of what we think is normal here in these conversations is normal out there in the jungle, as you put it, Devin, you know, like that's not actually really true. There's a lot of people are scared shitless, you know, scared of their own curiosity. So yeah, I would say yes, I have sensed people's curiosities and I am curious back. And I have also sensed people's immediate shutdowns or immediate like, nope. And I just remain a curious leader. And sometimes it creates an opportunity for a conversation. And eventually, I'm not saying that like I'm just like endlessly curious and I'm like, but what do you think? But what do you know? It's not just like to the point of annoying someone, but you know, because we can tell. But I think that first thing to just shut it down or to go back to the sets is maybe something to think, okay, wait, but I'm the curious leader. Even if I turn and do a few more sets, can I turn around and ask something else?
No, it's the Curious Leader by Layla and Derry. I love that. That's oh, that's so good. That's great.
Oh, Devin.
And I like that, Layla, like continuing to be curious throughout that process. You know, I think that that is um not always easy too, because sometimes people will say, we've had conversations about this where like someone will say something that you just almost like, why would they say that? Or like that's kind of offensive, or wow, this person's really pushy in this about something, and we can get judgmental about it and can condemn that other person. Or they could turn into a client if you're curious about why they are acting the way they are and what their intentions are behind what they're doing, and kind of slowing down and being with that person. So I think that's like and I think the reason why I pose the question is because of that kind of like situations of what do you kind of do in there?
And you should totally kneel, like what Devin was saying, just because you're a man at the gym there. I agree wholeheartedly with what Devin said, that it doesn't mean the door is closed just because we go back to our sets too. You know, there's like remaining that curious person means the next time you come across him, even if you spot him at like a gas station around and be like, hey, you're that guy. You know, like we can always, if even in the moments that we feel we've lost, it goes back to that whole like get all the no's you can kind of thing, right? Like even getting a no or losing, we're still being noticed and we're still making a connection.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. What is it? What did it say in there? No's proposals are good for business. So getting a no, it doesn't matter if it's they say yes or no. It's a yes, it's a no for now. Yeah, Devin.
I feel like one of these core principles of just a prosperous human is presence. And so many of these things are pointing back to it. I think if we are able to show up more present than anyone else, that's where we create opportunities. And I think it's also pointing to something I've definitely experienced, especially at the beginning of like learning sales and running ads and filling out my calendar with like and not having the time to connect with people. And in contrast to thinking about the last person that I was really present with sitting next to on a plane again, and he started asking me questions, and it went into a beautiful conversation. I got to know him, and at the end he's like, what's your website, what's your like stuff, I want to let me know if you release anything, like I want to, like, you've really inspired me. And I could have been sitting there like trying to, I don't know, write another post and totally miss the fact that someone was there and interested and interesting. And yeah, so I think at the end, just like for me, that was really important. This book really helped me realize that like one person is an incredibly significant number.
Yes.
And you can, I don't know, it depends who you hang out with online, but there are definitely some groups that will invalidate the fact that one person is incredibly significant. And you can look at your stories or your engagement and be like, I'm not getting hundreds or thousands or more views, subscribers, or anything, but like one person is important. And if you make them feel important by doing all these things and being present and curious, maybe that's all you need.
I love that. That presence part is so key. I think that's what I was really like. Yeah, you can't key in enough on that presence thing, man. It's like even in that moment with that guy at the gym, I bet you if I waited 2 seconds longer, not to say that it's over with, but just to like that 2 seconds longer being present with that person would probably be, 1 second longer than most people would be present, and that who knows where that would lead to. And I was very curious about that and about my own self in that moment. Like, wow, if I just took like an extra, like one Mississippi, like what that would open up into. It's not like a huge amount of time, but it can feel like a huge amount of time that somehow. Ellen.
I get to trust more and more that if it's meant to be, well, something will show up. Some of you, Devon and Neil, I think I told you about this conductor I suddenly found myself next to in the National Opera House at the Domino. And he's like quite a big shot. And okay, I was at the Opera House. I had a ticket for a show. I got ill. I had to exchange dates for this show. So I got a seat that was not that good as my original seat. I did at one point have an opportunity to get a better seat, but I was not feeling quite well. So I was thinking, no, I won't make too much fuss. I'll see how it is when I get there. When I got there, the seat wasn't available anymore, but well, my next best seat was okay. And then I see this conductor sitting next to me. Well, I hadn't worked with him before, so I wasn't quite sure. So I went down to the people that worked in the ticket sales and asked, well, do you happen to know if Edward Gardner is here tonight? Because I think he's sitting next to me. And they were like, well, we cannot tell you that because, well, he is going to be here tonight. I know that. Where's your seat? Mm-hmm. And well, we aren't allowed to tell you who's is personal. So, and then they look at the screen and say, yeah, I couldn't possibly tell you if that's him. So I go back after the intermission and titles in with Maestro, so that he knows that I know who he is, and I just open up because he's not turning away from me. So I say, well, do you enjoy the performance? So we started discussing the performance, and I had some views on that, and he goes, you know what? I was just thinking the same thing. That's quite fun, especially when you're a mediocre orchestra musician yourself. And he started asking about me. Do I still play? And actually, I'm an apprentice to become a coach for musicians. My mentor is Nick Bottini, because Edward Gardner is British as well. So maybe you have heard of him. And he goes, yes, I have. With that kind of tone, you know, with like, yeah, that's quality. And I go inside, go, and we chat a little bit more, and then he says, "What's your name?" And it's not so easy, you know, for foreign people to remember my name. And I just curse myself because I didn't got myself to create a business card. I had thought about it so many times, and I didn't have anything in the opera house. I just have this small purse only for my phone and some Kleenex. You need that sometimes in opera, and some TikToks. So no, not TikToks. What is called these mints?
Makes sense.
So I say Elin, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Well, and then the second half starts when we're to leave. I was thinking, turn around, because he was walking first, and he turns around and says, "Nice to meet you, Ellen. Ellen, see you soon," something like that. I go, yay, and I do a lot of things so I can get his email address. Talk to Nick, of course. How do I create a good email? Ask him if he would like a copy of Nick's book. I could get. Nick said he could sign a copy for me. You know, send it to him. But I never got a reply, and this was since February.
Oh, that
Then,
was. Oh.
then fast. But then
Uh-huh.
what happened was the very next morning. You know what I did? Guess what did I do the very next morning?
You followed up.
I created a business card.
Mm.
Just a Word document, printed it out, cut it out. So now I have always one in my phone.
Nice.
Always two with me. This day I went to my school where I work and made some more. So it's not much, but it's something. It's something. And then this October, I joined. It was a concert as a fundraiser, so everyone is working voluntarily, creating a symphony orchestra, and everyone works for free. And the usual conductor, he was unavailable for one of the rehearsals, so we had a substitute for him. And I recognized him. It's of course not Edward Gardner, but his apprentice who sat next to him in the opera house.
Oh, wow.
That was him. So
Wow.
I was just after the rehearsal, hey, I remember you from so and so, and he started to remember, and everyone was going out for beer, and I was, you come in, So we ended up at the same table talking for an hour, and he was actually conducting some musicians in my hometown, and goes on about creating an operetta. We have a beautiful old theater house here, and he was wanting to put up operettas there, and that was his dream, to conduct that. And I said, oh, if you do, then you please contact me, because I want to play.
Ah.
So I got to give him my card. He was about to speak, because I told him about this event. Oh, I have emailed him. I haven't got an answer. Are you to meet him? Yeah, later in this month. I'm going to see him. Yeah, please say hello and ask him if he has gotten the email, because sometimes emails get lost. I didn't know if I had the right address. So I did get to give him the card. So if they should talk, if he would remember this, and if Edward Gardner should be interested, then his apprentice have my card.
Nice.
So, and this is about, well, if it's meant to be, it's like universe is coming back to you. And I really got something out of that experience, more than just a bunch of aliveness and joy, because finally got to make a credit card. Not a credit card, a business card.
Mm.
You know, and I've used that several times afterwards. And Neil, you know, you have learned something important from that experience
Mm.
about curiosity, about oh, I should have done. Yeah, and now you know. Maybe that was his role in meeting you. Was not to become your client, but to create, to spark this this learning process in you, so you can use that for another one.
Mm.
Yeah,
Sure.
planting seeds. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you can use that in a different context, which might be a client that's meant for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And with this conversation, it makes it even more affirmative. Fantastic. I have to go because I have a client actually. So this has been a fantastic conversation, and we'll see each other next week.